Right, okay, let's talk about Leicester City. It's really hard to tell how they're going to do this year. I'm kind of concerned about picking any players from that team. I think Riyad Mahrez leaving is a really big blow to that team, and it's difficult to see who the star man is that's going to be worth picking. I mean, Jamie Vardy is probably the only player that you'd look at really closely from Leicester now. I've seen a lot of people getting excited about Harry Maguire. I personally don't think he's all that good. I know he had a pretty good tournament for England in the World Cup, but one of those players that didn't actually perform all that well last season, I think, for Leicester in a defence that was quite leaky. One of the things you've got to be worried about with Leicester is that team and that dressing room, and whether they're still trying to adjust to being champions a couple of seasons back. There was a lot of rumours last year that the dressing room's pretty unhappy. It's a pretty leaky place in terms of the press. They really didn't play at all for Ranieri at a certain point. And you wonder whether they're going to be up for it this year. They could be great or they could be terrible like they started last season. So it's very difficult to confidently pick Leicester players right now with Mahrez leaving. On the positive side, they signed James Maddison from Norwich, who looks like a really exciting young player. He got 15 goals for Norwich last season in the Championship. It's just always really hard to tell which of these guys are going to step up and do it in the Premier League. Will he be another Patrick Bamford, a guy who seemingly could score for fun in the Championship and then has looked very average at Premier League level? Or is he the best value player in the game? Could he be that mini Mahrez that everyone's looking for, that you can pick up now relatively cheaply and goes on to bag a load of points? Time will tell. I'm personally going to keep an eye on him. I'm not picking any Leicester players, I think, up front because of my concerns about their team and their squad with Mahrez leaving. But I guess we'll see which Leicester City turns up this season. All right, time to talk about Liverpool. I mean, Liverpool are going to be pretty great this year. I mean, there's no... You don't need me to tell you that. Same manager retained nearly all of their players and added some strong players to it too. They will be a force. They are going to run pretty close to winning the title. I don't think that they are going to beat Man City to the title, but I think they're comfortably going to finish in the top two this year. But let's focus on FPL. And when thinking about that, you just can't look past Mohamed Salah. I think he'll have just as good a season as he did last season. I've heard a lot of people talk about him returning to the mean, that he won't perform as well as he did last year, fewer goals and assists and so on. I don't think that's true. I think the guy's an amazing talent. I think he will score just as many goals potentially as he did last year. So he's the first name on my team sheet, even at 13 million quid. I think you kind of have to start with Mohamed Salah and then build a team around him. Another player that I think is worth picking from the start is Roberto Firmino. I think Klopp loves him. He works hard up front. He gets goals, gets involved in assists, and is picked pretty regularly. Yeah, I think old Bobby Blueteeth will get a lot of goals again next season. And out of those attackers that Liverpool have, I think he's the player, in addition to Salah, that I feel most comfortable picking. I love Mane as well. I think he's a great player. I just don't know how often he'll play. So Salah and Firmino are the two players that are going to form the core of my team, I think. Defensively with Liverpool, I'm not sure. I mean, Van Dijk came in last January and had a big impact. They seem to be a lot better. This year they could be well worth thinking about defensively as well. Alisson's come in at goalkeeper, and they've got a tighter defensive midfield, I think, with Fabinho and Keita ahead of them this season. So their defenders could be worth a pick. I still think they're just a little weak at the back and maybe kind of overemphasise attacking sometimes. So I don't think they're going to pick up quite as many clean sheets as some of the other top teams. But that said, there's going to be a lot of times where Liverpool play this season and other teams just won't be able to get the ball off them. A little bit like we saw with Man City last year. So maybe there are clean sheets to be had there. And certainly from the back, Andrew Robertson looks like a very good player worth signing. I mean, he was very good at getting forward down the left side and when whipping in crosses last season. Potential for assists and goals as well, and he's a young player. I think he's one of the first players that gets picked on that team out of that back four, and Klopp really rates him. So for a player that's going to play regularly, get forward and maybe gets lots of clean sheets, Robertson is very good. He is priced at £6 million though, and that is expensive. There may be kind of surer bets out there at that price range, but he's definitely a player that is worth considering. Another quick point on Liverpool is they have got a good set of early fixtures. Home games against West Ham, Brighton, away at Palace, Leicester, Tottenham and Southampton. I think there's a lot of points and goals to be had for Liverpool there. Okay, on to the other main event this season, Manchester City. Manchester City won the league comfortably last year. It wasn't even close. I think it's very difficult to see anyone stopping them doing something similar this season. I think Liverpool will run them closer this year, but I expect that Man City will have a very similar season to last season. I think signing Mahrez has been a good stimulus to their attack, even though their attack was fantastic last year. Gabriel Jesus, Sergio Aguero, De Bruyne, Sane, Mahrez. There's just so many players that, Sterling of course, so many players that you kind of want to have a very serious think about playing. And in the same breath is the problem with Man City. It's like who's going to play consistently from the start, who's going to play 90 minutes, who's going to get on the end of those goals and kind of provide those killer assists. The key player for me is De Bruyne. I think he's relatively well priced versus some of those other players as well. I think he'll score goals, get assists. He's involved in taking, free kicks and corners, and because of that consistency, he's a player that I want on my team this year. I'll obviously be looking very closely at all of those other players from an attacking point of view. And City are well worth looking at defensively as well. You have Ederson, Otamendi, Kyle Walker, and Benjamin Mendy. And Benjamin Mendy is the player that I'm probably looking at the closest at the start of this season. He was a very attacking fullback. Had a bad injury last year, but in the few games he did play, racked up a lot of points. And I just like how attacking he is. The other thing about Manchester City is their start to the season is pretty fantastic. They have that first tough game at the Emirates away at Arsenal. Then comes Huddersfield at home, Wolves away, Newcastle at home, Fulham at home, Cardiff away. It doesn't get much better than that as a run of fixtures. So I'm hoping that City can deliver a load of points. This should be where I'm gushing about this third big team in a row, but I'm definitely not going to be doing that when it comes to talking about Manchester United. I think they're a mess at the moment, and I think that there's just bad vibes coming out of that squad. Mourinho feels distracted and grumpy. Maybe he's fulfilling the pattern that he usually has, where he doesn't do so well after a couple of seasons at a club. That said, they finished second last year and were very efficient at kind of acquiring league points. David De Gea and Romelu Lukaku, I think, are the two clear potential picks out of that Man United team. Paul Pogba as well. If you think that he can continue his form from playing from France in the World Cup and take that into this Premier League season, I personally don't think he will. I don't think he kind of can in a Mourinho team. I think he'll probably feel stifled and potentially won't be getting forward in quite the same way or with the same confidence that he was for France. And overall, kind of getting back to that vibe about Man United, I think they look weak at centre-back. There's not really that many of their defenders that I feel confident picking. I know Valencia and Young can get forward and could potentially score a lot of points, but they're priced quite highly, and I just don't feel that United are set to have as good a season as they did last year. I mean, what's going on with Martial? It looks like Matic is out for the beginning of the season. Will Alexis Sanchez ever fit in there? I'm not sure his personality is the right fit for that dressing room right now. So overall, I'm avoiding picking Man United players this season. I'm certainly at the beginning because I just don't feel excited about their prospects. Okay, Newcastle United, another club I kind of like. I think it could be a rough season for Newcastle though, and it's tough to see an FPL star in their team. I think they'll be very happy that they retain the services of Martin Dubravka, the goalkeeper. He seemed to have a great season for them last year, and he's worth thinking about from an FPL point of view. I just feel though he's priced at £5 million, and I think there's better value to be had at £4.5 million for goalkeepers. But he will make a lot of saves, and he was a good player for Newcastle last season. Their midfield still looks pretty defensive-minded. Kennedy is potentially a good option. He's gone back there again on loan for the season from Chelsea and is a good attacking player. When he finds form and is getting picked regularly, he's good value at 5 million, especially for a player that has the attacking potential that he has. So he's a player that I think is definitely worth keeping an eye on. And then Perez, the forward, picked up a good number of goals towards the end of last season and a good number of FPL points. He's in that same conversation of kind of those budget strikers, and I'm going to be watching him very closely. I think he's a player that I may well pick up, but I want to see how Newcastle line up this season, where he's playing and how he's going to slot into the team. Newcastle have lost Dwight Gale and Alexander Mitrovic. Both have left the club, and so it's not entirely sure who's going to be around to support Perez and how they're going to get the goals that they're going to need to drive them forward.